So if you run a successful therapy practice, maybe physical therapy, occupational, speech language, growth is always, on the horizon. And once you've kind of conquered your local market, that dream inevitably starts pointing towards crossing state lines.
It's the natural next step.
It's an exciting idea, right? Well, new clinics, more patients, bigger revenue.
It sounds like pure opportunity until you hit the administrative wall, and that wall is usually Medicaid. The reality is multi-state expansion, it often just stalls out, not because of logistics or finding good people, but because of this bureaucratic thicket of multi-state Medicaid enrollment.
You're basically trying to build a national house with 51 different sets of instructions.
Exactly. And that's the friction point we're really digging into today.
Right. So this deep dive is based on materials designed specifically to help therapy practices get through this maze. Our mission here is to kind of filter out the noise and give you the essential nuggets, the timelines, the acronyms, the things you really need to know to make this work.
And we have to start with the absolute foundational truth. I mean, if you don't get this, nothing else makes sense.
Okay.
Medicaid is not a federal program. I mean, it is, but it's administered and funded by each state individually.
So enrollment in, say, California
gives you absolutely zero automatic privileges next door in Arizona. None.
So if a practice wants to treat patients in 3 new states, from a credentialing standpoint, they are literally starting 3 separate businesses. Is that the right way to think about it?
That is exactly the frame you need. You're applying to different government organizations, and each one has its own rules, its own budget, and its own compliance standards to worry about.
Okay, let's unpack that. The rule of separate enrollment. You have to enroll formally and separately in every single state's program where you want to see a patient and, submit a claim.
That's it.
But wait a minute. What if a practice is already approved by Medicare? I mean, that's the gold standard. It's the most rigorous payer. Why doesn't that approval carry some weight?
That is a fantastic question, because logically you'd think it would. You'd think that Medicare certification would be like a passport. But the rules, they just changed dramatically with the Affordable Care Act, the ACA.
Okay, so what did the ACA do?
It introduced these really stringent national screening requirements for all Medicaid providers. The main goal was to clamp down on fraud and abuse.
So the government tightened the screws on a national level, but it still left the door open for states to do their own thing.
Precisely. The ACA sets a federal minimum for things like background checks, ownership disclosure, all that. But, and this is the key, states are explicitly allowed to impose requirements that go beyond those minimums.
And that's why the paperwork is such a crapshoot.
Total crapshoot. One state might just need a simple form, but the state right next door could demand a full, bespoke application, fingerprinting, a whole different set of documents.
That variation really just hammers home the need for a plan.
You mentioned a timeline earlier, which I think is critical. For practice planning, it's budget. What's the hard number we need to be thinking about here? You have to budget for time. Based on everything we've seen, initial enrollment approval can take, at a minimum, about 90 days.
90 days. 3 full months.
3 months per state. And that's a baseline for a perfect, clean submission with no errors.
Wow.
One tiny error, or if that state's office is just backlogged, that timeline can stretch out way longer.
3 months per state. So if a clinic wants to expand into, say, 4 new states, they're looking at a 9 to 12-month lead time just to get credentialed before they can submit their first claim. That just blows up a cash flow projection.
It shifts everything. If you don't account for that 9-month wait, you've built a clinic that's basically operating at a loss for almost a year, even if your therapists are ready to go on day 1.
And it's not over then, is it?
Not at all. Once you're in, you're not done forever. The ACA also mandates ongoing maintenance. You have to revalidate your enrollment, which is like a mini renewal process every 5 years.
So the administrative burden isn't just intense, it's perpetual.
It's perpetual.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the therapists themselves. Before we can even think about billing, a practitioner has to have the legal right to practice in that state.
Right. They need the professional license first. And this is actually where we get the first piece of really good news, especially for therapy practices. This field has been a leader in solving the licensing puzzle with something called interstate compacts.
Okay, I've heard of these. They're game changers, right?
They are absolute game changers for licensing. But they are also the source of a ton of confusion when it comes to Medicaid.
So tell us about the compacts that matter for our listeners.
Well, there are 3 main ones. For physical therapists and PTAs, you have the Physical Therapy Compact.
Okay.
For occupational therapists and OTAs, there's the Occupational Therapy Compact. And then for speech-language pathologists, there's the Audiology and Speech-Language Pathology Compact.
And what these do, if a state has joined one, is they grant what's called compact privileges, correct?
Exactly. It basically shortcuts the whole process. It accelerates the credential verification, it cuts down on redundant paperwork, and it lets a therapist start practicing in a new state really quickly. It solves the right to practice problem. It's a huge win.
And this feels like the critical distinction, the aha moment that every practice owner needs to understand.
Yes.
These compacts, they speed up licensing. They do not replace the mandatory, separate Medicaid enrollment application in each state.
We cannot stress that enough. They're two completely different things run by two completely different state agencies.
So the professional board says, yes, you are qualified to treat people here.
And the state Medicaid department says, yes, you are authorized to get paid by us. The compact only helps you with the first part of that.
So you could have a compact privilege, see a patient on Monday, but you still can't bill for that service until you finish that separate 90-day Medicaid enrollment.
That's it. It's like having the key to the front door of the building, but you still need a different key to open the cash register.
That is a perfect analogy. Okay, so is there any shred of simplicity here?
There is one, thankfully. The National Provider Identifier, or NPI.
Ah, the NPI.
Yeah.
The one number to rule them all.
That's right. Your clinicians only need one single national provider identifier. It's used everywhere, all states, all payers, Medicare, Medicaid, commercial, everything.
So you don't need a new NPI for every new state.
Nope. That centralization helps a lot. It's also why tools like CQH ProView can be useful, because they let you store all that provider data in one place.
But just to keep it complicated,
Of course.
while your NPI stays the same, each state will still assign you and your clinic its own unique state-specific Medicaid provider number once you're approved.
Precisely. So you keep one NPI, but you collect a new state Medicaid number with every successful application.
So we know the when 90 days and the why state autonomy plus the ACA. Let's talk about the how. If I'm getting ready to apply in a few different states, what's the universal paperwork I need to get my ducks in a row for?
Right. You need a core package of documents ready to go. First, obviously, is the official Medicaid provider application itself. Sometimes it's online, sometimes it's paper.
Okay.
Then you always need the basics. Your W-9 tax ID form, proof of your business structure, and copies of everyone's professional licenses and certificates.
And what about that Medicare number?
Absolutely critical. If you're already enrolled with Medicare, you need to submit your Medicare CMS certification number for each state. It can often streamline their screening process.
And speaking of screening, it's pretty intense, right?
It is. It's mandatory and comprehensive. You have to disclose detailed ownership and control information. There are federal background checks, screenings for any criminal convictions or, being kicked out of other federal programs.
And you have to check for state-specific stuff, too.
Yes. Always check for specific provider-type requirements. A state might have a special form just for physical therapy clinics that's different from what they require for a nursing facility. The devil is always in those details.
Okay, let's dive into something specific from the source material that I think is a huge trip up for people. The OPR rule.
Oh, yes. The ordering, prescribing, referring rule.
This is a big one.
It's a huge one, and clinics have to get this right. So, under the ACA, any provider who issues an order, a prescription, or a referral for a Medicaid service often has to be enrolled in Medicaid themselves.
Wait, even if they never submit a claim for payment?
Even if they never submit a single claim.
So if one of my physical therapists writes an order for, I don't know, a walker or some other medical device for a patient, even if my clinic isn't billing for that therapist's time, that therapist still has to go through the full 90-day enrollment.
In many states, yes. They have to enroll as what's called a non-billing OPR provider.
Why? What's the point of that?
The goal was to stop shady providers from ordering expensive services or equipment while basically staying invisible to regulators. This way, everyone in the chain of care has to be on the books.
That is a powerful nuance. It dramatically expands the list of staff you need to get credentialed. Okay, last question for this section. Cost. Is this going to cost me thousands of dollars per state?
Probably not. Generally, individual practitioners, the PTs, OTs, SLPs, they usually do not pay an application fee.
Okay.
Now, the clinic itself, the institutional provider, often does have a fee, but you can sometimes get it waived if you're already enrolled in Medicare or another state's Medicaid. But for the individual therapists, the cost barrier is usually very low or zero.
Okay, we have established the complex, maybe even scary reality. Let's pivot to what we can do about it. Actionable strategies. Strategy one sounds simple, but I bet it's essential. Centralization.
Centralization is your survival tool. I mean it. With all these varying processes and the 90-day wait, you need a dedicated system. It could be a fancy database or just a really, really good spreadsheet.
And what are you tracking?
Everything. The exact submission date, who you spoke to on the phone, the approval status for every single provider in every single state. If you try to manage this with sticky notes and emails, you are going to fail. Things will just fall through the cracks.
Got it. A single source of truth. Strategy 2 is about planning for the future. You mentioned timing coordination.
Yeah, think about that 5-year revalidation rule. If you're expanding into, say, 5 states, and you submit those applications randomly over a 2-year period.
Then 5 years later, your renewal deadlines are scattered all over the calendar.
Exactly. It becomes this endless, rolling administrative headache. The smart move is to align your initial submissions. Try to get them all in around the same time so your future revalidation windows are all synced up.
That's smart. That is long-term thinking. Okay, strategy 3 is basically admitting you might need help. Delegation and expertise.
Look, if this is a core part of your growth plan, don't try to do it on the side. You need professional support.
So either hire someone internally.
Right, a dedicated credentialing coordinator whose only job is to manage this, or you engage a third-party credentialing service. An expert who knows these rules can spot state-specific quirks, submit cleaner applications, and just manage the follow-up more efficiently. It can save you a lot of time and headaches.
And finally, strategy 4, which is about being smart with your choices.
First, we have to say it again. Leverage those interstate licensure compacts. Save time on the licensing front, but also look for reciprocity.
Does that actually exist, where one state accepts another's enrollment?
It's very rare for full programs, but you might find limited reciprocity for certain niche services, especially between bordering states. It's always worth asking the question.
And if a clinic is choosing between 2 states to expand into, what's a key business factor they should consider?
Prioritize states that have adopted Medicaid expansion or just have really large existing Medicaid programs.
Why is that?
A bigger Medicaid market means a higher volume of potential patients. That translates directly to faster, stronger cash flow once you finally clear that 90-day enrollment hurdle. Don't waste your time on a state with a tiny program if a high-volume state is an option.
This has been an incredibly focused and I think essential deep dive. For anyone listening, the main takeaway seems to be this. Successful multi-state growth is all about understanding that strict separation. There's licensing on one side, which is getting easier thanks to those compacts. And then there's Medicaid enrollment, which is still a tough 90-day state-by-state process.
That's the whole game.
Preparation, submitting everything in parallel, and just meticulous tracking.
Yeah.
That's how you turn this bureaucracy into an actual growth engine.
And I'll leave you with one final thought on that. Given that OPR provider rule we talked about, the ordering, prescribing, referring one, practices expanding nationally can't just stop at tracking their billing providers. You have to systematically verify and document the Medicaid enrollment status of all your staff members who write orders or referrals in every single new state.
So not just the person whose name is on the final claim.
Not at all. True compliance and getting your claims paid means enrolling everyone involved in that treatment cycle. That is the true scale of the administrative burden you have to master to succeed.